mindset on doing things. One at the time they says, you have brought us out here to kill us. We better we did stay where we were, because that is something that we were used to and we were content to be there. And God, who wants us to practice the wait, because there is something that happens in the process of waiting and you begin to see his promises. They were complaining, we have no water. You remember that account? And God said to brought Moses and Aaron up and says, this is what I want you to do for me. And what was it? He says, I want you, because they were saying, we don't have any water. You're going to speak to the rock, and the rock is going to bring forth the water. Those were the specific instructions that were given to him. But they never followed the specific instructions, because they were unhappy, or Moses was very mad at the people.
They were upset.
Yes, very, very upset. And instead of speaking to the rock so that they could begin to understand how powerful God is, that in your time and situation that he would, Numbers 20, that they'd come through, he struck the rock. And it prevented him from accessing, from leading the people of God into the promised land. And I'm saying, wow, having waited so long, having gone to God, God had given you instructions, you decide to respond in a way which was a bit offline in terms of the original instruction. You were supposed to speak, so the people would see the manifest power of God. Can you imagine you speaking to a rock and out of the rock comes water versus striking it? You've decided to accept second best. And because of that, what happened to him? He lost the opportunity, having taken them out of Egypt, which Egypt represents a mindset, to move them through the wilderness, to prove what was in their heart as they waited on him, so they could go into the promised land to access all the blessings that God had for them, the land that would be flowing with milk and honey. He, as leader, decided that I'm going to try second best. So we spoke about waiting yesterday. We spoke about the principles that God would kind of superimpose himself on so that you can see your miracle. You have that instruction. And then at the time that you are supposed to walk into your breakthrough in terms of seeing God fulfilling what he has said, you decide to do what you think the instructions really meant, because of not sticking to the original instructions. So even as you wait, my gentle people, even as you see the principles coming together to give you your miracle, don't settle for second best in terms of what God has. Because for Moses, because he did not obey what God told him to do, he did not lead the people into the promised land.
I have a question
Nor
for you.
Moses did not enter. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Why did God tell Moses? Why do you think God told Moses to bring the rod, since the rod was not to be used?
He never told to bring the rod.
Yeah, man, he said, take the rod. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, verse 7, take the rod, but you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes.
It must speak
and
to
it
the
will
rock.
yield its water. But why did he say, take the rod? Because he had the rod in his hand and he used it to strike the rock when he got so annoyed.
So annoyed. So it was a test for him too.
Well, I think the rod represented
What you was familiar
the
with?
miraculous power.
What you were familiar with?
When you have a radam, you want to use it,
Oh, Jesus,
even if
have
it is of
mercy.
no
Oh, Lord,
use.
you need
The radam.
Oh,
Yeah,
my Lord.
he was told to take the rod. Now, as you were speaking, I was just reflecting on the many times that we have around us all the things that can bring the solution, and we don't use it. We panic when we are under pressure and stress because of the people's violent opposition. And boy,
Because they wanted to stone them, you know.
Moses know that these people not easy. And they had only known, I say it even of us in our current state, Jamaica, they had only known brutality and harsh treatment. They didn't know loving forbearance and tolerance. They were accustomed to the whip of the slave master,
and that's what God was trying to break out of
harshly.
Yeah.
So they didn't have any love or understanding to give to Moses, no matter what Moses had done.
And they had no reference point.
They really had no reference point in giving anything other than criticism, violence, abuse. That's what they had been nurtured on for the last 400 years. So when they met up on a bit of hardship,
they resorted to what they knew.
They went back to what they knew. Moses now, having been cultured and raised in the Pharaoh's palace, and having seen firsthand all that God had done in his move to bring these people out and take them to the place he had set for them. The rod in Moses' hand, every time he held it, he had to remember, I threw this down, it became a snake, and it ate up the other snakes. I raised it and the water parted. He had to, I believe, whenever he had that rod in his hand, he would have had a reminder
of the power of God.
So when he stood there, back turned to the people, looking at the rock and saying to the rock, thus said the Lord, you have water in you for these people. Give it up. The rod should have been just a source of confidence, not something that you brandish to show the people that you're the man.
Or even not something that you fall back on, because what I've discovered in my own experience.
I think Chloe will have something to say.
No, it's just following on the point that you're making. Remember, he did it in anger.
Yes. That's why I said right. That's
thinking.
He wasn't thinking. Intemperate. I make a note here that is intemperate behavior under the stress of opposition. How many times do we see it? We saw Dr. Angela Brownberg fall prey to the same thing, in full possession of her rights, moving on a worthwhile track. Some nagging voice from the penny section says something.
the normal penny section.
Yeah. Says something. And she lose her position.
She struck the rock.
Yeah, because too, another thing that just jumped out at me.
The rock?
No, not the rock. the fact that.
Oh, the fuck. The fact
that you have been used to certain things.
Yeah.
And now God is saying, I'm taking you to another level.
Yeah.
I'm now restoring you to where you can speak to situations and see the answers manifest. Because remember, the rod represented what he was used to in the circumstances. So it wasn't a bad thing. It was his past experiences.
Well, the Lord told him, take the rod.
Yeah, but what?
He says, take the rod.
But take the rod.
And your brother Aaron. Two sources of God's provision for you.
Yeah, before. But God is saying, in this new way, remember he says, I want to speak to the rock before their eyes.
Yeah, so it was all about the people seeing God do something.
But the one of the things, because I was just meditating on that passage, and the rod was there, but God was saying, all right, now, you are progress in this point in time. I'm taking you to another level in terms of your walk with me, in terms of being able to speak to situations and see the miraculous happen right in front of your eyes. There's a lady, I'm trying to remember her name, and she says,
Is she in the Bible?
No, not in the Bible, but she uses the Bible. She says, speak to your morning in terms of the things that you want to do. Yeah, command the gates, but speak to your day. These are you made declarations as you get up in the morning in terms of the way that it should be.
As we analyze these things, there are a couple of things you need to bear in mind. One is that a lot of the people didn't have any point of reference.
Which is important. That's what I was saying.
So you see, when we look at these things, we're looking at it having all the information available to us. Yeah? So that is something that we need to bear in mind as we look at it. There was another point I was going to make. It just
so yeah, while you're hunting out your other point,
go ahead.
The reason I drew your attention to the specific instruction for the rod to be a part of the stage, it's because Moses needed to be comfortable that he was now moving under the specific instruction of God, who had faithfully delivered. He had his brother Aaron beside him. Aaron was a part of the leadership because when he appealed to God about his own speech defect, God says,
all right,
take Aaron.
Aaron to be a mouthpiece.
Right. The rod is in his hand because God had, through the use of the rod, said, this is how I can demonstrate my power and my presence. Moses ought to have been displayed more tolerance for the people. Coming out of the point you're making, they didn't know better than to squeal and wail and fight and scrap for things. And Egypt was all they had known. So when they panicked in the desert and thought that they were going to die there, Moses was the one who knew better. Yeah. And this business of quietly, if you can just imagine the stage is set, the people are there howling. Moses has brought them to a rock. They're standing looking, okay, rock, I don't see no water. And Moses would just stand with his rod and his general beside him. And it would be almost like a moment of quiet, because speaking to the rock without amplification would mean the people wouldn't even probably know, but they would know that an invisible presence was activated when the water gushed out of the rock.
Yeah. Right. No, the other point is that the people saw Moses. They didn't see the God in Moses. And that is also another thing. Even to this day, we face it. And the people tend to respond to who or what they see. Yeah? Because we know that there's more to life than what you see. There's more in the invisible than what's in the visible. Mm-hmm. So therefore, at all times, they were looking at Moses. So they had to make a judgment for themselves. Yeah, this man is saying all of these things. Is he really saying it of himself? Or is there really something behind him that's really guiding him? You know, and the strangest thing, which is the same thing if you fast forward, it happened to Jesus Christ. Despite all the miracles that he performed, there were people who were just still there, just waiting to trip him up. So the children of Israel, they were concerned about their own state, right? And that was what drove them. And so they also were quite anxious and angry.
The demands of their body, the flesh, what it wants. Yeah. But I'm kind of standing there in the desert and understanding what Percy is saying, that God is doing a new thing in a new way. And the demonstration of his power would not have been of the type that they had been seeing before, where you could see man doing something vivid and obvious.
Right.
It would have been a fairly quiet moment, standing there, speaking to the rock, commanding the thing to happen in accordance with the word of God, and then seeing it happen. That would have engaged what you say, the invisible, because all they would see is Moses standing, holding his rod quietly. People at the back wouldn't even know, what did he say? What did he do?
Right.
But when he lifted his hand and struck the rock, the telling